Hi, welcome to the video on agents using Langchain. This is one of the most powerful elements of Langchain, where it's able to combine the internet with large language models. So now let's just see how these agents work. Now agents have three components to them: tools, large language models themselves, and agent type. Let's look at tools first. Now tools is essentially the task that needs to be done. So say for instance, if you wanted to know what's the temperature, you would go ahead and Google that. Now that same thing can be done using a SERP API in the tools section. So we'll see more of that. Say for instance, if you needed to calculate and multiply numbers or divide numbers, that's something that can be done with LLM maths using tools. So you want to think about that any action that you do or any task that you do is essentially what tools does. And this is what makes agents so powerful. All right. So let's try to get a few of these done up. So you need the SERP API for our first example. LLM Math comes installed inside, so we don't need any API for that. But for SERP API, you would need to get the API key, and you would need to install. So you can install it using pip install Google search results, and you can go to the site, just Google and SERP API key, and you'll be able to build your own API key for that. The first 100 calls that you make a month are free. Okay, so you could just import OS, and in your environment you can add the SERP API key to that. All right. Now from a previous Langchain videos, we just would just import Langchain, would get in OpenAI as the LLMs. Remember, there are other LLMs also. You would also need the OpenAI's API key. That was also there. Okay. Now once you've done this, now is the time for us to go ahead and build our agent. Before building an agent, there would be certain elements that we would need to import. Now we would need to import three things. The first capability that we need is to be able to load tools. So tools would be something like SERP API, Wikipedia, LLM Maths. That's when you need load tools functionality for that. To initialize your agent, wherein you combine the agent with tools and LLMs, you would need the initialize agent. And to determine which kind of agent you want would be the agent type. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, three steps that we need to follow for our agent is determine the language model that you want, the tools that you want to use for it. So in this case, we're going to use SERP API and LLM Maths. And the third is going to be when you're going to initialize the agent. So you're going to tell the agent that you want that LLM. These are the tools that you're going to use. And the agent type in this case we're using is 0-shot. So let's activate this. Now we go ahead and run a first question to this agent. Now, what is the temperature in Toronto? Now, when you run this, what you also want to think about is that this is not just the LLM at work. The large language model has been trained, it's done that, but now there's also an element of the web, which is being accessed through the SERP API. Now, when you look at the result that we get, it says the temperature in Toronto is 15 degrees. One of the things is that we really don't understand what's happening behind the scenes. It's just giving us the output. It's recommended that we always put in verbose equal to true, because what it's going to do is that it's going to give us information about how it came up with this answer. So let's go ahead and run this thing again. And now it starts giving us information about it. It says entering new agent executed chain. I need to find out the current temperature in Toronto. So the agent is giving us the reasoning that needs to find out the current temperature in Toronto, where it's going to get from the prompt. Now it gives us the action that it's doing. The action is search. So search would effectively be Google search. The action input that is giving it is temperature in Toronto, right? So again, remember that this is a little different from the prompt that you gave. It says, what is the temperature in Toronto? But the input that it's getting is temperature in Toronto. So it does its own processing over there. And then it comes up with observation. Now this is interesting to see. It says temperature is 14.7 degrees. Where is it getting it from? So let's run a Google search and see from where it's getting that particular element. So I ran this Google search. It says temperature in Toronto. Now remember, there's one which says 20 degrees. That's not the answer that we were getting. We were getting it at 14.7. So when you read this one, the first part that we get here is it says temperature 14.7 degrees and dew point this. Whereas if we open this, what do we see is the temperature is 14.7 and dew point. So it's effectively scraping the very first element that it's getting. Not this. This would be the results that's in output differently, but it's going to look at the very first result that it gets, and it's going to take that first line and then feed this into its own observations. So now this feed would be given to the LLM, and the thought is that I know the final answer, and the final answer is the temperature in Toronto is 15 degrees. So it takes this temperature 14.7 and the LLM gives it an answer of 15 degrees. And thus we get this particular thing. Now, one thing is very interesting. If you say, what is the temperature in Toronto? You could just rephrase this by saying, I am standing next to the CN Tower. What is the temperature? The output that we get again is the action is search. The action input is current temperature Toronto. So that does not really change much from what we get. But this time when it changes the output from current temperature Toronto, the first output result that it would get, let's see, if we put this into Google search, the first output that we get over here, not in the ad section, but it takes from environmental, is current conditions observed in Toronto. This one is what it is, has taken from here. And then by looking at it, it's able to get the temperature of 14.7 degrees. So very interesting. Now, what we've done till now is effectively just use the feature which is going to be of SERP API of simply scraping Google results. What I would also recommend is that to really explore tools, because tools is what makes the agent section so powerful. So let's look at another tool, which is Wikipedia. So within Wikipedia, you need to install Wikipedia by doing pip install Wikipedia. And then the only change that you would make is to the load tools, because now you're not giving your tools like we did earlier, where we were pushing the tools as SERP API and LLM match. Now we're directing the agent to move towards Wikipedia, and we're saying, okay, that what you want to use is you want to move towards Wikipedia. And when we generate a agent, the tools and LLMs would now push it towards using Wikipedia. So once the agent is there, let's just ask it a question. Who is Donald Trump? And tell me in 10 words. So now what it starts doing is, it again gives us all the inputs that it's doing. It started the chain. Now I should look for a brief description. The action it does is now Wikipedia as opposed to search earlier. The input that it gives is Donald Trump. Then it picks up a page. It takes that page and builds a summary of it. And then since it now would feed this into the LLM, and the LLM would give its a final answer because we've asked it to do it in 10 words, it would take this feed from Wikipedia and then give us the final output, which would be 45th US president, businessman, media personality, and so on and so forth. So in my view, agents would become really powerful based on the tools that are there. I would strongly recommend that you go and look at the Langchain documentation, which does a good job with regards to the tools that are there. I hope all of this has helped you, and looking forward to seeing you in further videos. Thank you.